Get ready for truth and transparency from an ocean of liberal tears. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
And here we are back again talking about GISD and the Texas Tribune, ProPublica, NBC, all the liberal media swamp, and yes, Jeremy Schwartz, who we call Pinocchio Jer. And once again, it's an article about Dr. Jeremy Glenn and the books that have been taken out of the libraries in GISD. And we showed you on other shows the porn and the smut that was in there. And yes, there are people here in GISD, from parents to students, that want smut and porn in the library books, and they have to be crazy. They can get that on their own cell phone. They can watch whatever they want, but not on the tax dollar. Let's talk about this article that Pinocchio Jer penned.
Yeah, they want to still try and slant this as this is a move against transgender and the LGBTQ community, when really what this boils down to is we are not, the school district is not in the business of sexualizing children. And that is what these people are trying to defend, that this type of material should be available to young children in our school district. And when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it and you look at what they're trying to defend, saying that our children should have access to, like you said, it's just plain crazy.
And this whole article is predicated on this, I guess you could call it a leaked recording or secret recording or something, where Dr. Jeremy Glenn had called a lot of the librarians together to, say some things that were on his mind and give them his position on these matters. And it's presented as if it's supposed to make Dr. Glenn out to be some kind of jerk, but I actually like Dr. Glenn considerably more now after having listened to all that than I did before. Which he was already a nice guy, but I like him just a little more now.
And it's not just his position. It's the position of the school board. It's the position of this community at large. We don't want this type of material in our school libraries, and we don't want our children reading this on the taxpayer dollar.
And, this all comes from Governor Abbott's and Representative Krause book list. And to kind of go back a little bit, Jeremy Schwartz did the first couple of articles. He has a fetish with Hood County and Granbury. And they want to get the woke people woken up here in Granbury. And he needs to stay in Austin. And the second paragraph into this article pretty much explains everything to you. And like you said, Nate, Dr. Jeremy Glenn was recorded on here, and he's quoted, "I want to talk about our community," Glenn said. According to a recording of the January 10th meeting obtained and verified by, of course, NBC News, ProPublica, and the Texas Tribune, Glenn explained that Granbury, the largest city in the county, where, get this, 81% of the residents voted for then President Trump in 2020 presidential election. And then it goes on to say, and that's not part of the quote, here's part of the quote, Jeremy Glenn said it's very, very conservative. Well, yes, it is, but here's the premise for all this Texas Tribune, NBC stuff is 81% of the residents voted for President Donald Trump. So they can't have that. So that's where all this is coming from.
Right, because if you voted for Trump, you're inherently racist, and you're wrong, and you're a bigot, and how dare we?
Yeah, not only all of that, but also this community has really developed a reputation the last several years as being the tip of the spear for the conservative movement. So I think they like to highlight what we're doing because the movement is doing so well here, what with winning these elections and all, Courtney.
Right, and if you want to, you mentioned Austin, and if you look at what's happening in Austin ISD, they are teaching young children, very young children, about being transgender, and you don't necessarily have to be a boy or a girl, and they're telling these children not to tell their parents about it. Is that what we want here in Granbury ISD? I don't believe so.
Further in the article, it goes down and it talks about Monica Brown, who's a Granbury resident, and it quotes her from a Facebook video following the decision. There are people who want to tear down values and force their values and then also force acceptance. And that's from Monica Brown. And yes, Monica, I agree 100%. There's no tolerance, which these people talk about, and the hatred coming from the people that have the values, and they're wanting to force their values upon the people here in Granbury and the kids. And once again, parents, keep an eye out for this, and thank you, Monica Brown, for standing up. Moving down through the article starts to attack the conservative activists.
Yes, and a lot of the issues that I hear from parents in the community is that these types of books in the school, especially when you're looking at younger school-age children books that talk about this kind of sexualization, it is a form of grooming, and it's something that predators use to groom their potential victims to try and normalize certain behaviors so that when they do prey upon their victims, they aren't as likely to speak out about it and say something.
This whole idea of talking to juveniles, minors, about being transgender or being bisexual or whatever, like Dr. Jeremy Glenn said in that recording, that doesn't really have a place in schools. We should be focused on the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, history, etc. But instead we have this group of liberal activists in the liberal media that want your third grader or fifth grader asking questions about, hey, maybe I am transgender. And unfortunately, society and pop culture is at a point to where you almost get some form of like cool points, or I call it the oppression Olympics, who's more oppressed. And, if you are a 12-year-old that says you're bisexual when you have no clue what that even really means, you get some cool points from your peers. And now you're oppressed and you get to wear the symbol and you all rally behind it. I mean, it's really disgusting what they're doing to these kids and what they're causing them to think about when they should be worried about being kids. When's the Power Rangers come on? What about Pokemon? Why can't we go back to that?
Right, and child development wise, when you look at the brain of the developing child, there's something called the latency period, and the brain is just not developed enough to fully understand these concepts, and you can actually do more damage to children by introducing this sexualization to them at an early age. It does more harm than good, and I know many parents feel like their taxpayer dollars go towards the education of their children, not to the sexualization of their children.
And it all has to do with, in the porn aspect and this aspect, has to do with age-appropriate material for the kids. If you want to talk about something like this when you're, in high school, maybe college, upper high school, college, have at it where people can understand. The parents know about it. The parents will know that it will be taught. Then you can teach this stuff, but don't be teaching lies about transgender things. And we're in this type of society where we've talked about it before, where you expect me as a person that believes we have a male and female biologically and male and female as a gender, and you expect me to appropriate and celebrate your lie or confusion because you want to be called something else. If you want to be called something else on your own time, so be it. Go do whatever you need to do.
And that's something that I think they're trying to change, is like this whole perception of truth is subjective. It really doesn't matter. You can believe what you want to believe. It doesn't make it true. Truth is truth, regardless of how you want to misconstrue the facts, regardless of what you want to believe. Those are your personal beliefs, but they don't make them true.
And this really all goes back to the communist takeover of the United States, where postmodernists infiltrated our universities and our institutions and the press, etc. And they have everyone now going through these indoctrination programs that say ugly is beautiful, right is wrong, there is no truth, there is no good, there is no evil, everything's subjective. They have gotten us now to where we are so far behind the curve, being traditionalists, traditional conservative Christian Americans, that, look at postmodern art. It's all disgusting. Like, it's not art. Art is the Mona Lisa. Art is the Sistine Chapel. Art is not a piece of rebar. with some bird poo on it. Like then that's the type of stuff that they pass off. They try to take the world and turn it on its head. And it's, in my opinion, part of the communist takeover of America. And they're succeeding very well right now. And we're starting to fight back. And I hope people see that.
It's basically just removing the moral compass, that baseline you have for society. And when you do that, like you said, it's a free for all. And then nothing is off of the table.
As we go into the article from Pinocchio Jer, it talks about, once again, you got to get back to that Trump, you got to get back to the conservative. It talks about Melanie Graft and Courtney Gore, you, getting on the board of trustees as a school board member, and how conservative you are, and you ran against CRT, and you both did, and you ran against this junk that's getting in our schools and being taught. And you want it to go back to the way it was, as far as let's teach critical thinking.
Yeah, let's get back to education the way education was meant to be. Reading, writing, arithmetic, the critical thinking skills that children are going to need in the real world as adults. That school is not the place for sexualizing our children.
As we get to the end of the article, and it's a long, drawn-out article from Pinocchio Jer, and they talk about the ACLU of Texas sent a letter to Granbury calling on the district to apologize for the book removals. So here we go. ACLU, come in. You got to apologize. Well, let me tell you something. ACLU of Texas, you are disclosed, but you have given money and still give money to the Texas Tribune, ProPublica. You give Pinocchio Jer his salary to keep going. So ACLU of Texas, of course you're going to support this and help out Texas Tribune, ProPublica, NBC, because you're all part of this swamp from the media, and you're giving them money to keep going and doing this and to attack and be intolerant against Granbury ISD.
It's not just intolerant against Granbury ISD, it's intolerant to conservative principles anywhere in this nation.
And they all follow the same deal, and we see this here at the local level with County Judge Ron Massengill. They always try to scare conservatives by saying, well, what if they sue? What if they sue? The ACLU tries to say that because Dr. Glenn exercised his First Amendment right, that would somehow be a legal challenge for them. And that's one of their very few avenues to get conservatives, is to get them scared of a lawsuit. They did it with the gay marriage stuff back in 2015. They're doing it right now with the septic system stuff at the Hood County Commissioner's Court, and they're trying to do it to the school board. But really, it's all a bluff. Keep charging. History is on our side, and keep doing what you're doing at Granbury ISD.
Bottom line, this is about removing pornographic, sexually explicit, and vulgar materials from school libraries. That type of material should not be in a school library in an educational setting or provided to young children on the taxpayer dollars. This is coming from Governor Abbott's office, where this type of material should not be available. It's not educational, and it is not age appropriate. And it's sad to see that there's some people out there that want our young children to have access to this type of material. I'm glad that Granbury ISD has taken the stance that they have and protecting children from being sexualized in our schools.
And for those kids that are confused, and this is one of the things Dr. Glenn talked about in that leaked recording, we already have counselors there for the students. If some student is confused about their gender, go see your counselor. That's what they're there for.
And I'd like to remind the people that, this is tax dollars. It's your tax dollars. This isn't your private home, your private phone, your private Netflix, your private computer. Go watch whatever you want. But when I see that on social media comparing to tax dollars and a school, you're free to do whatever you want. You can start your own club. You can do whatever you want and show all the porn to your kids you want, and you'll probably get arrested for it if you do and you're found out. But always remember that the superintendent is hired by the trustees, hired by the school board, and works for the school board, the elected officials, on the behest of them. So I would like all the school board members, we know that Courtney Gore and Melanie Graff stand behind Superintendent Dr. Jeremy Glenn on this issue. I would like publicly for every single board member to speak up and stand behind Jeremy Glenn as we continue to move forward as a school district with all these woke people coming in from Austin doing articles on our, quote, independent school district. This is Granbury ISD's independent school district. This is not Austin. This is not California. This is Granbury. And yes, Pinocchio Jer, 81% for Trump in 2020. We are conservative. Shark Show out.